Kia ora, good evening. Southlanders were sent running for cover this weekend as a rapidly moving front enveloped the region at around 1 o'clock on Saturday, bringing with it gale force winds, horizontal rain and hail.
The first victim of the bitter westerly onslaught was the Bluff Oyster and Seafood Festival, which had got underway in bright sunshine as scheduled, but soon high winds began to cause concern to event organisers as the main food and beverage tent began to lift. It was then decided that the event would be brought to a premature end around 1 p.m.
Oh, I mean, the beginning of the day was fantastic. It was a little chilly early on, but the weather was pleasant enough. Big crowd, around about 4,000 tickets sold in advance, and a good walk-up crowd as well. But unfortunately, when those high winds hit, which were extreme winds, we had some problems with the tents, and unfortunately we cancelled the festival there and then. It was just slightly after 1 o'clock, and that was primarily for public safety. I mean, safety's paramount, so nobody will be more gutted than the organisers, the amount of work they put into it, but as I say, safety's the key, so the festival was called off at that point.
45 degrees South's Andy Fraser says that the weekend's weather events did not come as a surprise.
We've had about 85 mils of rain since last Tuesday. There was a big system building up south of the Tasman Sea, and gale force winds were predicted for Saturday. Unfortunately, they came with a hiss and a roar after quite a pleasant morning, but that weather was always on the cards, and that was quite a fast-moving front. It more or less traversed the lower South Island in the space of 3 hours. You know, it would have been moving at 40 knots, 45 miles an hour. Came through with a hiss and a roar, and we do sometimes suffer from very dramatic weather changes down here in the south.
Following the early closure of the Seafood and Oyster Festival came frustration on the road as thousands both heading to and away from the stricken event became delayed following the closure of State Highway 1 after an errant power cable came into contact with a vehicle. Emergency services and PowerNet staff worked as the two occupants of the vehicle patiently waited to be freed, traffic eventually flowing after a delay of over an hour. Seafood and Oyster Festival organisers philosophical about the outcome.
And we've been very lucky. We've had a great run with festival weather. We're near the beginning of winter, and we've had some superb weather over the last few years, but this was extreme.
And into Saturday evening, there was very little let-up as the region and city continued to be lashed by gale force winds and thunderstorms, with a top gust of 111 kilometres an hour recorded at Invercargill Airport.
Saturday evening there was shower bands forming up in Fogo Strait, very active showers. There was a lot of thunder, and they were running across Aridi Beach, Ototara, and effectively across more or less the southern half of the city in a narrow line, maybe only a few kilometres wide. And those places got maybe thunder for an hour and a half. There was hail off and on for that entire time. I think northern parts of the cities escaped entirely. That's not uncommon in these types of cold, showery flows, where showers will tend to gather in certain locations and completely miss others.
The weather proved too much for one Tay Street address, which lost part of its brick facade. Parks and Reserves staff were out today clearing up damaged foliage, but Parks and Reserves manager Robin Pagan says there was very little damage around the city and staff are expected to be clearing up for the next day or so. And those hoping for an earlier start to the ski season as a result of the cold snap may have to think again.
It's hard to say. They'll be very excited about it, but at this time of the year it only takes 2 or 3 days of northwest winds and a bit of rain, and a lot of times I've seen May snow disappear entirely by early June, so they'll probably get a wee bit to stay on the higher slopes. It's really a wee bit too early to count their chickens.
Tomorrow is expected to dawn with a frost in the city, but a clear day is expected, leading into a mild Wednesday, followed by a possible brief cold spurt on Thursday, but nothing like the conditions experienced over the weekend. Hunter Andrews, South Today News.
3 Southland Sharks National Basketball League players are facing assault charges following an altercation outside a New Plymouth bar in the early hours of Sunday morning. Police are appealing for witnesses to the fight, which took place around 2:30 a.m. in front of the crowded house bar on Devon Street. The 3 Sharks players, aged 19, 21 and 28, have been charged with assault with intent to injure and are scheduled to appear in the New Plymouth District Court on Wednesday. The players were out celebrating their last second win to the Taranaki Mountain Airs. The male pedestrian who was struck by a vehicle on the Waimea Highway State Highway 94 near Gore on Saturday the 17th of May has died in Dunedin Hospital of the injuries he received in the accident. He's been named as Brodie Carroll, aged 19, from Gore. An investigation into the crash is continuing and police say that it's too early to say whether charges are likely. Green candidate for Invercargill, Dave Kennedy's campaign received a substantial boost following yesterday's release of the Green Party list. Mr Kennedy is now 19th on the party list, up 4 places from 2011. Hunter Andrews today asked the Green candidate what he put his list promotion down to.
I think I've got a reasonable profile within the party. I've got reasonable credibility around education, and I think I'm involved at a fairly reasonable level within the party organisation itself.
19 on the list. I think Materia Ture in Dunedin is probably the next closest, and of course she's a co-leader, so she's right up the top. It does place a lot of emphasis on you to get that green message out down here, doesn't it?
Yes, well, I think it's more than just environmental. I think education's a really important area, and that's something that I've got a bit of expertise in. This government has gutted education, teachers are demoralised, things like overpay, gutting all our advisors and such like, has really knocked a lot of the enthusiasm out of teaching, and people are finding things really difficult in that area.
You'd be a bit concerned though with the latest polls showing that National can actually govern alone.
Yes, but I mean, I'd always take polls with a grain of salt. I don't think any party has actually got over 50% in terms of a vote at any election, and I'm sure things will change again as they have in the past.
A long way to go.
That's right, yes, take it day by day.
Stay with us after the break. Revised plans for the South City makeover, and Venture Southland sets out its plans for the next 12 months. Welcome back. Venture Southland's new look draft business plan for 2014 to 15 has been released for public comment and outlines proposed actions, activities and allocations of resources for the next financial year. The plan highlights 5 priority project areas, including the dairy sector, international marketing alliances, rural community engagement, events promotion and development, and land use opportunities. Increasing tourism alongside support and promotion of the Around the Mountain Cycle Trail, establishing new international education partnerships, including Chinese high schools, community development in Ojai, Nightcaps, Tuatapere and Wyndham, as well as continued development of the high-value oat industry are all listed as key projects. Another key program outlined in the plan is the Southland Futures project, designed to help the region's young people into agricultural sector employment. Some of the local primary sector community identified the need to encourage young unemployed into rural jobs, which led Venture to undertake research and create solutions to build better pathways.
A large part of the work we've been doing up to this point has been research to make sure we've got a really good picture of what the situation is. So some of that was a wide industry consultation that we did, talking to over 50 organisations, from schools to training providers to employers and industry bodies. We also talked to students, so over 600 Year 10 students right across the region. We consulted them on what their views were, and we've done some focus groups with employers and young people. So we've got a really good picture now of what the challenges are, what the barriers are, and what we need to do to move forward.
Can you give us some examples of what that research did reveal?
Absolutely. Well, it showed that young people are really positive about agricultural jobs, but sometimes they think that maybe it's not for them. So particularly if they're from an urban area, they've got no past connection with the industry, they see that as maybe stopping them from moving into the sector. There's also a lot of problems in terms of quite a complicated system, a lot of players involved in that system and not very good connections at transition points. So when people are moving from school into employment, choosing what to do, what kind of career to follow, or into work experience programs, or even people who are unemployed, looking at then how they get back into the workforce. So greater coordination is needed, really.
It's not as laborious as it used to be, farming. Do you think there's some misconceptions out there about what's involved?
There definitely are still some misconceptions. It's a technologically much more advanced industry now. There's a huge range of careers and opportunities available, but young people tell us that they know that you can earn lots of money in the agricultural sector and there's lots of opportunities, but they don't maybe see how they can then get into those jobs. So I think we've got a really clear picture that it's not just about misconceptions or misperceptions, but about how you can actually get the experience and skills that you would need to go into those jobs.
What is the time frame on this?
Well, we're hoping if we get the funding lined up that we're applying for to begin towards the end of this year.
Is this something that's happening around the country?
It's definitely atop of lots of people's agendas around the country. We know of various regions like Canterbury that are working on initiatives. It's a challenge that's experienced in lots of regions, but obviously agriculture is so important to Southland. 11% of New Zealand's exports, tradable exports, come from this region, and obviously most of that is the primary sector. It's our biggest employer, so we really need to get this right.
As far as funding goes, how much are you expecting to perhaps get for this?
We're looking for about $200,000 a year for the next 3 years, and then we see that as an ongoing project to continue beyond that point. We need to basically have some funding and support for a coordinator and someone to help make matches and employment and work experience for the region.
It's hoped local retailers, residents and public will make an effort to attend this week's final consultation meeting about the Ellis Road Martin Street upgrade. This will be the last chance for people to share their ideas on concept plans, which were changed from the originals to reflect past consultation and community needs. The latest designs by landscape architect Craig Pocock will be on display to show proposed changes to multiple outside spaces in South City, including Ellis Road and both sides of Martin Street. The final consultation meeting is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Wednesday, with written feedback on proposed changes closing Monday the 9th of June. And that's all from the news desk this Monday. Stay with us for sport up next after the weather from the news team. Good night.